I thought I had it all. Power, wealth, a beautiful wife. But the moment I saw those photos of her with him, my world shattered. She thought I wouldn't find out, thought I was too busy to notice, but I always notice. I don't forgive, and I sure as hell don't forget. My revenge? It wasn't just a plan, it was a masterpiece. I froze her life, ruined her lover, and watched them fall piece by piece. Now they're both begging for mercy. But mercy, that's for the weak. I was never weak. I built an empire, and I'll destroy anyone who crosses me. Please help us reach our first 1,000 subscribers. Your support means everything and keeps us motivated to bring even more exciting content. Thank you so much and hope you enjoy today's story. Let's begin. Dominic Kruger's eyes looked over the San Francisco skyline from his corner office, a small smile on his face. The city spread out in front of him like a prize he had won, and in many ways, it was because of his tech company. Kruger Innovations had just finished another successful quarter. The stock was doing great, investors were eager, and his competitors were doing their best to keep up. He turned away from the window, his polished shoes making no sound on the soft carpet. His office reflected his achievements, with its sleek design and modern art meant to show strength and style. At 45, Dominic looked much younger, with a fit body and hair that was just starting to turn gray. A quiet knock at the door broke his thoughts. "Come in," he said, his voice clear and confident. His assistant Sarah stepped in with a stack of reports, the quarterly numbers. "Mr. Kruger, your wife called. She wanted to remind you about the gallery opening tonight." Dominic's jaw tightened slightly. Elena, his beautiful wife, was admired by everyone in Silicon Valley. She was probably already getting ready, choosing the perfect outfit to make a strong impression. "Thank you, Sarah. That will be all." When the door closed, Dominic let himself think for a moment. Their marriage had become dull. Elena was certainly lovely, but her need for attention had grown tiring. Her subtle hints of discontent bothered him. He was busy running a company. He could not cater to her every wish. Still, they needed to keep up appearances. Being a power couple helped his business, even if it felt more like a performance than reality. Meanwhile, in their grand mansion across town, Elena Kruger stood in front of a mirror, but her face didn't reflect the satisfaction Dominic imagined. She nervously toyed with a diamond necklace, another lavish gift from her husband, which felt more like a burden with each passing day. Elena sighed as she looked at herself. At 32, she was still stunning. Golden hair, striking green eyes, a figure that caught attention. Yet lately, the looks didn't mean much. What use was being admired if the one person she wanted to notice her barely did? She thought back to when they first got married. Dominic had been sweet, giving her gifts and taking her on thoughtful outings. But as his company grew, he became more distant. Now, she was lucky if he came home for dinner more than once a week. Elena's gaze fell on the invitation on her vanity. Another gallery opening. She would go, of course, pretend to be the perfect wife, laugh at the right moments, and charm everyone around her. It was what she was used to. But oh, how she wished for something real, something that made her feel alive again. Little did she know a change was about to come into her life. The gallery was busy when Elena arrived, fashionably late as always. She moved through the crowd, accepting friendly greetings and compliments with ease. Dominic was not in sight, but that came as no surprise. He would probably show up late, make a brief appearance, then leave early to attend to something important. She was on her second glass of champagne when she saw him for the first time. He was tall, with messy dark hair and a charming smile, standing out from the group of polished tech leaders and their guests. He was focused on a large, abstract painting, his head tilted as if deep in thought. Without meaning to, Elena found herself walking toward him. "Interesting piece, isn't it?" she said, her tone playful. He turned to her and she felt a flutter in her chest. His blue eyes sparkled with a hint of mischief. "Absolutely," he replied, matching her playful tone. "I love how the artist shows the confusion of today's world with what looks like random blue paint." Elena couldn't help but laugh, a real laugh that felt refreshing. "I'm Elena," she said, extending her hand. He took it, holding on just a moment longer than necessary. "Tony Harper. Nice to meet you, Elena." As they chatted, Elena felt something awaken in her. Tony was everything Dominic wasn't. Lively, spontaneous, and fully engaged in the moment. He was an artist, he said, sharing his passion with a humble humor that was nice and easy. They were so lost in their talk that Elena didn't notice Dominic's arrival until he stood right beside her. His presence was strong. "Darling," he said, his voice warm but with a sharp edge, "I see you've made a new friend." Elena felt a brief pang of guilt but pushed it aside. She hadn't done anything wrong. "Dominic, this is Tony Harper. He's an artist," she introduced them. The two men exchanged looks, a silent tension in the air. Dominic's handshake was firm, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "An artist? How nice," Dominic said, his tone indicating otherwise. "I'm afraid I'll have to take my wife away now, Mr. Harper. We have business to attend to. I hope you understand." As Dominic guided her away, his hand on her back, Elena glanced back one last time. Tony was watching her leave, his charming smile still on his face. Elena felt a rush of excitement. For the first time in years, she truly felt alive. Dominic Kruger was not a man who liked being tricked. As he sat in his home office, he looked at the photographs laid out before him. A cold anger started to build inside him. The images showed Elena, his wife, in close moments with another man, the artist Tony Harper, from a recent gallery event. He had sensed something strange about Elena's new interest in art and her distracted behavior. She had become protective of her phone, but he never thought she would openly show signs of discontent. Louis Moreau, the private investigator he hired, stood quietly by the door. The man understood not to say anything comforting or apologetic. He had done his job well. "Are these all the originals?" Dominic asked calmly. Louis nodded. "Yes, sir. No copies, no negatives. It's all on that flash drive, too." Dominic leaned back in his chair, his fingers pressed against his chin. He had built his success from the ground up and had been tough with rivals. Did Elena really think he would just accept this betrayal? "You're dismissed, Louis. Please send the rest of your fee in the morning." As the door shut behind the investigator, Dominic let out his emotions. He swept the photographs off his desk in frustration, watching them fall to the floor like autumn leaves. But just as quickly, he regained his composure. Dominic was not one to lose control. He thought ahead and planned carefully. He began to act. First, he called his bank to freeze their joint accounts and cancel credit cards. Then he contacted his lawyer to start divorce proceedings and to enforce their prenuptial agreement fully. Finally, he headed to the master bedroom. Elena was likely at another charity event. He began to pack her belongings, including her elegant dresses and sparkling jewelry, carelessly tossing them into suitcases. When he was finished, he wrote a note. "You wanted freedom. Now you have it. Don't come back." He changed the locks within the hour. Meanwhile, across town, Elena was enjoying herself with Tony. His home was a big change from the neatness of the Kruger mansion. It was full of life, with paint and creativity everywhere. They barely got through the door before sharing tender moments. Later, as they lay together, Elena felt a pinch of guilt. She knew she should feel worse about what she had done to Dominic. Yet in Tony's company, she felt truly understood. "We should go away together," Tony said softly. "I have a show coming up in Paris. Come with me." Elena hesitated. It felt unconventional to even think about leaving Dominic. Her life was built around being Mrs. Kruger. Yet she found herself whispering, "Yes." Surprised by her own response, she realized she wanted this change. "Let's do this." The dream fell apart the instant she tried to get into her house. Her key wouldn't turn. Confused, she rang the doorbell. No one answered. That's when she saw the suitcases stacked neatly by the door. A note was attached to one, and as she read Dominic's short message, her heart sank. He knew. How could he know? Fear filled her throat. She hurried to grab her phone, but her credit cards were canceled. In just one evening, Elena Kruger went from being at the top of the tech industry to having nothing at all, her hands shaking. She called Tony. He would understand. He would help her. But Tony's feelings for her had faded quickly after hearing about her troubles. An affair with a wealthy man's wife was one thing, but dealing with a woman in a difficult situation was too much for him. "I'm sorry," he said, but he didn't sound sincere. "I have my career to think about. I can't get involved in this. You understand, right?" The line went silent, and Elena sank to her knees on the doorstep of her once happy home. She had gambled everything on a dream and lost it all in one night. Meanwhile, Dominic was already planning ahead. He thought Elena might try to get back at him or harm the company out of anger, so he had increased his personal security and kept away from possible threats. What he didn't expect was Brian Mendoza, an old rival, sniffing around for a chance to take advantage. As the whispers of the Kruger family's problems spread, Brian saw an opening to attack Dominic. He launched a plan to undermine him by spreading rumors to shake investor faith in Kruger innovations. Brian's team worked hard to find anything that could weaken Dominic's position. However, Brian was about to learn a tough lesson. Dominic Kruger was most dangerous when he felt trapped, just like Elena was now all alone. Tony Harper was coming up with his own scheme. Although he didn't want a relationship with her anymore, he saw a chance to profit from the situation with some well-timed photos and the right connections. He thought he could make a lot of money from Dominic Kruger. This plan came from Tony's arrogance and greed. He believed in his own charm and cleverness, unaware that he was stirring up trouble. Dominic, sitting in his office with a drink untouched on his desk, appeared beaten to anyone looking from the outside. They would have been wrong. Behind his calm exterior, plans were forming in his mind. He had been pushed into a corner. Yes, but a trapped predator is the most dangerous kind. The phone buzzed on his desk. It was Mr. Kruger's assistant. "There's a Tony Harper here to see you. He says it's urgent." A slight cold smile appeared on Dominic's face, just on time. "Send him in." Tony strode into the office, trying to look confident, though it was clear he wasn't comfortable. He dropped an envelope onto Dominic's desk. "I think you'll find what's inside very interesting," Tony said, his voice shaking as he felt Dominic's steady gaze. Dominic didn't even look at the envelope. "Let me guess. Photos featuring you and my wife trying to make a deal to keep them private? You want money? A share in my company?" Tony said, his smile fading. This was not how he intended things to go. "Listen, Kruger, I'm giving you a chance to keep this quiet." Dominic's voice turned calm but firm. "Did you really think you were the first one to try this? I have been prepared." With a click, Dominic turned his computer screen toward Tony. It displayed a detailed report. Tony's history of scams and secrets was all there, exposed. "While you were busy taking those pictures, I was learning about you, Tony Harper, or should I say Anthony Harding. You've had many names." Tony's face lost its color. "How did you—" "I have resources you can't even imagine," Dominic replied. "Now here's what's going to happen. You will give me every copy of those photos, and then you will disappear. If you don't, I will make sure you face serious legal troubles. Am I clear?" Tony nodded, his confidence gone. He hurried to leave, but Dominic's voice stopped him at the door. "Oh, and Tony, if you ever come near me or my company again, what happened today will feel like a gentle warning. Now leave." As the door closed behind Tony, Dominic allowed himself a moment of relief. One problem taken care of, but bigger challenges lay ahead. Across town, Brian Mendoza felt pleased with himself. His plan to take over Kruger Innovations was moving forward. Investors were worried, and the board had questions. It seemed that Dominic Kruger's business might soon fall apart. But Brian had made a big mistake. He thought that Dominic, dealing with personal issues, would be too distracted to fight back. He couldn't have been more wrong. Just as Brian was celebrating, Dominic was preparing. He was gathering loyal employees and reaching out to friends in the industry for support. A counter-offensive began with careful planning, and details about Brian's business dealings started to leak to the media. Key investors in Brian's takeover bid suddenly became unsure. Through it all, Dominic Kruger stayed strong, showing an image of steady confidence to everyone. Things began to change. What once looked like a sure win for Brian Mendoza was quickly shifting. Just when Dominic thought he had overcome the hardest part, Elena showed up again. She was at his door, looking very different from the glamorous woman she had been just months ago. Her clothes were wrinkled, and her makeup was smudged. She held a baby closely. With a trembling voice, she said, "Please, I have nowhere else to go. This is your son." For a brief moment, Dominic felt a hint of something, maybe sympathy or regret. But he quickly pushed those feelings away. Elena had made her choices. She had betrayed him. "Come in," he said, his tone cold. "We have a lot to talk about." As Elena stepped inside, holding the baby tight, Dominic's thoughts raced. A child could bring complications, but it also offered chances to make sure Elena could not threaten him again. He closed the door quietly, his face giving nothing away. The situation had changed, but Dominic Kruger was known for being flexible. Whatever Elena's plan was, he would make it work to his benefit. After all, in business and in life, Dominic always found a way to win, and he was not about to change that now. Dominic's office was a strong and modern space, much like him. He stood by the large windows, hands behind his back, looking out at the city he had almost lost. But Dominic Kruger never lost, especially not to someone unfaithful or to movers and shakers like Brian Mendoza. Suddenly, the intercom buzzed. "Sir, she's here," came the voice from the speaker. A cold smile formed on Dominic's lips. "Send her in." Elena entered, looking different from her past self. No more designer clothes or perfectly styled hair, she seemed small and defeated. "Good. Sit," Dominic commanded without turning around. Elena sat nervously on the edge of a chair, holding her purse tightly. "Dominic?" she started, but he interrupted her, finally turning to face her. His gaze was icy. "I don't want to hear your excuses. I want to know what you can do for me." Confusion crossed Elena's face. "What can I do for you?" she asked. Dominic leaned against his desk, looking over her. "Brian Mendoza. I know you've met him at those charity events. I need you to get close to him. Share information with him. I will tell you what to say." Elena's eyes widened. "You want me to spy for you? Think of it as making up for your past mistakes," Dominic replied, his voice filled with disdain. "You were quick to turn against me before. Now you can use those skills differently." Elena felt nervous. This wasn't the meeting she had hoped for. But what choice did she have? She had no money, no home, and a child to take care of. Dominic held the power in this situation. "And if I do this?" she asked quietly. "You'll let us stay?" Dominic smiled slightly. "I'll think about it. But remember, Elena, one wrong move or even a hint of disloyalty, and you'll wish you had stayed on your own. Do we understand each other?" Elena nodded, feeling her self-respect slip away. "Absolutely." As Elena walked out of the office, Dominic felt a sense of victory. He planned to use his former weakness against his enemies. When this was over, when Brian Mendoza was dealt with, he would easily move on from Elena. Meanwhile, Brian Mendoza was feeling the strain. His initial attack on Kruger Innovations had hit a wall. Now, he was losing investors. He walked around his office, his tie loose, hair messy. "How is he managing this?" Brian snapped at his advisors. "He should be struggling." One advisor spoke up bravely. "Sir, we underestimated him. Kruger is tougher than we thought." Brian slammed his hand on the desk. "I don't want excuses. I need results. Find me anything we can use against him." Just then, his phone buzzed. An unknown number. Brian answered, his voice a mix of hope and worry. "Hello, Mr. Mendoza?" A woman's voice, unsure but recognizable. "It's Elena Kruger. I might have some information you'd like." Brian's eyes lit up with excitement. Sometimes life gives you exactly what you need. He was stepping right into Dominic Kruger's plan. Dominic was at his home office, watching the pieces on the chessboard. Elena had reached out to Brian just as he had planned. Now it was time to set things in motion. He picked up his phone and called a familiar number. "Louis, I need you to watch Elena. Every move, every conversation. I want to know if she breathes without my approval." Louis Moreau, always professional, didn't ask questions. "Understood, Mr. Kruger. I'll take care of it right away." After hanging up, Dominic allowed himself a small grin. Elena thought she was in control, but she was just another piece in his game. And pieces can be sacrificed. Days turned into weeks. Elena shared carefully chosen bits of information with Brian, each one leading him deeper into trouble. Blinded by his need to beat Dominic, Brian believed every word. But even the best plans can go awry, and this time it was because of Allison Carter, someone from Elena's past. Allison had always envied Elena's life, her beauty, her wealth, her seemingly perfect marriage. Now, as Brian Mendoza's assistant, she saw a chance for payback. It was an unexpected meeting at a coffee shop. Elena, tired from her complicated life, almost walked past her old friend Allison. Allison's voice was sweet but had an edge to it. "Oh my," Elena thought. It had been years. Elena stopped in her tracks, forcing a smile. "Allison, what a surprise!" As they chatted, Allison's sharp gaze noticed Elena's tired look and the lack of a wedding ring. "You poor thing," Allison said, her voice dripping with feigned sympathy. "Dominic isn't treating you well, is he? You know, I'm working for Brian Mendoza now." Elena's heart began to race. This wasn't what she wanted to hear. But as Allison painted a picture of freedom and how to get back at Dominic, part of Elena's mind started to listen. Maybe there was a way out after all. Later, in the elegant bathroom of Brian Mendoza's penthouse, Elena's hands shook as she held the sink. What had she done? The burden of her latest choice sat heavy in her stomach. She had just given Brian real information about Dominic's business. This wasn't just any information. It was something she had discovered during one of her visits to the company. Allison's words rang in her ears. "Think about it, Elena. Once Brian takes down Dominic, you'll be free, rich, powerful. You won't have to answer to anyone. Isn't that what you've always wanted?" It had sounded so tempting. A way out. Dominic had trapped her into a situation that now felt like a chance to regain control. But as Elena looked at her reflection, she didn't see someone about to win. She saw someone who had made a foolish choice once again. Meanwhile, in his office at Kruger Innovations, Dominic Kruger allowed himself a rare smile. "Everything is going as planned, sir," his assistant said through the intercom. "Mr. Mendoza's company just made a move just like you thought." Dominic's eyes sparkled with success. "Great, let's move to the next step." He had expected Elena to betray him again. That was her nature. So he had set a clever plan in motion. The information Elena found was part of a trap aimed at leading Brian Mendoza into trouble. As news of Brian's poor decision spread, Dominic relished the moment he would bring down one enemy using another. It was satisfying. But Dominic also knew he had to deal with Elena and Allison for good. Across town, Allison was feeling triumphant. She had really done it. She had outsmarted the great Elena Kruger. Brian Mendoza was thrilled. He was already planning to take down Kruger Innovations, and he had promised Allison a big reward for her help in the plan. One day, there was a knock at Allison's apartment door. Surprised, she opened it and saw Dominic Kruger there, along with two big, serious-looking men. "Hello, Allison," Dominic said, sounding friendly, but his eyes were icy. "I think it's time we had a talk, don't you?" Allison felt a chill. How did he find out about her plans? What did he know? As Dominic walked into her apartment, Allison realized she had seriously underestimated him. What happened next was like a lesson in mind games. Dominic revealed every detail of her past, her small crimes, her tricks, and her jealousy of Elena. He had everything, dates, times, and even witnesses. It was a strong case that could send her to jail for a long time. "Please," Allison begged. All her bravado vanished. "I'll do anything, just don't turn me in." Dominic smiled, but it was the kind of smile that felt dangerous. "Oh, I know you will, Allison. In fact, you're going to help me with one last task in this little drama." An hour later, Elena got a text from Allison. "Emergency, meet me at the usual place, now." When Elena arrived at the quiet cafe, she was on edge. Did something go wrong? Was Brian suspicious? Her heart sank when she saw both Allison and Dominic at a corner table. Allison looked pale and her eyes were red. Dominic had a smug look on his face. "Sit down, Elena," he said, his voice seemingly gentle. "It's time we cleared things up, don't you think?" What followed was a painful hour for Elena. Dominic systematically exposed all the lies, all the tricks she had played. He knew everything from the beginning. "You see, Elena," Dominic said, his tone almost kind, "you never had a chance. You were playing a simple game in a world where everyone else was playing a much more complex one." Elena felt the weight of her choices crash down on her. She began to cry, her makeup running down her cheeks. All her dignity faded away. "What do you want from me?" she sobbed. Dominic leaned back, looking at her as if he were calculating his next move. "It's simple. You're going to help me ruin Brian Mendoza completely. And then, my dear soon-to-be ex-wife, you're going to disappear. I'll take care of the boy. It's not his fault his mother made bad choices, but you must face the results of your actions." Elena nodded, feeling defeated. She had no will to fight left. No more plans, no more thoughts of outsmarting Dominic Kruger. As they left the cafe, Elena felt her old life slipping away. She longed for freedom, excitement, and a fresh start. Instead, she found herself caught in a situation of her own making with Dominic Kruger at the center. And a part of her, although it scared her, felt some admiration for him. Dominic Kruger stood at the front of the conference table. His presence grabbed everyone's attention. The room was filled with his most trusted team, chosen for their loyalty and ability to get things done. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dominic began, his voice calm and firm, "today we put an end to this. Brian Mendoza thinks he can take what belongs to me. He believes he can use my personal life against me. Today, we will show him he is mistaken." He nodded to his CFO, who displayed some financial charts on the screen behind him. "Thanks to the information from our allies, Mr. Mendoza has pulled too far ahead. His company is deeply in debt, counting on a takeover that will never happen." The room buzzed with excitement. They had all seen Dominic in action before, but this felt different. "We act at dawn," Dominic continued. "I want every resource we have ready. Use every connection. By this time tomorrow, Brian Mendoza will face the consequences of his actions." As his team left, eager to collaborate in bringing down Brian Mendoza, Dominic felt a moment of satisfaction. He had faced many setbacks in life, a disloyal partner and a greedy rival, and turned those challenges into opportunities for success. Meanwhile, across town, Brian Mendoza was blissfully unaware of the trouble coming his way. He paced in his office, excited about what he believed would be a great victory. "This is it, everyone," he exclaimed to his colleagues. "By this time next week, Kruger Innovations will be ours. That overconfident man won't see this coming." If only Brian knew that the insider information he relied on was just a clever trap meant to lead him to this moment. As Brian raised a glass to celebrate early, Tony Harper, just out of prison and eager to rebuild his life, was making a plan. His reputation was damaged because of Dominic's actions. Tony saw Brian's fight against Kruger as his chance to regain his place. He charmed his way into a meeting with Brian, telling him he had valuable information and a strong desire to get back at Dominic. "I know him better than anyone," Tony said, turning on his charm. "I can get you what you need to take him down." Brian, excited about what victory might look like and influenced by a bit of celebration, fell for it. "Okay, Harper, you have one chance. Don't make me regret this." What Brian didn't realize was that he had invited trouble into his circle. Tony had no intention of helping Brian. No, Tony Harper was looking out for himself, as always. If he had to play both sides, he would come out on top. Well, that's just smart business, right? The sun rose over the city, coloring the sky in shades of pink and gold. But in the offices of Kruger Innovations and Mendoza Enterprises, no one had time to enjoy the view. A financial battle that had been building for months erupted. Dominic's team moved swiftly, taking advantage of every flaw in Brian's struggling company. Stock prices dropped sharply, credit lines were cut off, and talk of possible bankruptcy spread among investors. Brian Mendoza stared in shock as his carefully built plans fell apart. "This is impossible!" he shouted, hitting his desk in frustration. "How could our information be so wrong?" In his panic, Brian turned to his secret weapon. "Tony Harper, you promised you could bring Kruger down. What happened?" Tony, always looking for an opportunity, replied, "I saw the signs. It was time to switch sides again. I can explain everything, but not here. Meet me at the old warehouse on Pier 17 tonight. I'll give you the proof you need to fix this." Brian clutched at this last chance. Meanwhile, Dominic Kruger was putting the finishing touches on his plan. He had expected Tony's betrayal and relied on the man's predictable greed. "Is everything ready?" Dominic asked Louis, his loyal investigator. Louis nodded, a grin on his face. "Yes, sir. The police have received an anonymous tip about a major deal happening at Pier 17 tonight. They'll be there in force." Dominic allowed a cold smile. "Perfect. Make sure we find Mr. Harper with some very telling evidence, won't you?" As night fell, Brian Mendoza entered the dim warehouse, desperation showing on his face. He spotted Tony waiting, a sleek briefcase in hand. "Brian, my friend," Tony said smoothly, "I have everything you need to take down Dominic Kruger for good." But just as Brian reached for the case, the warehouse burst into chaos. Police sirens blared, flashlights lit up the darkness, and strong voices demanded everyone to stop. In the resulting confusion, Tony tried to escape but ran straight into a group of officers. The briefcase swung open, spilling packets and cash across the floor as Brian and Tony were led away in handcuffs. From the shadows, Dominic Kruger watched with a satisfied smile. With one clever move, he had eliminated both threats to his business and his peace of mind. The sirens faded into the distance, leaving Dominic alone with his thoughts and his victory. He pulled out his phone and dialed a familiar number. "It's done," he said simply, hanging up without waiting for a reply. Across town, Elena's phone buzzed with a mysterious message. She understood what was happening. The game had come to an end, and Dominic had emerged as the winner. As always, she looked down at the sleeping child in her arms. This was Tony's child, unknowingly caught in the middle of this difficult situation, and she felt a wave of tiredness wash over her. What would happen to them now? Dominic had promised to take care of the child, but Elena did not fool herself about her own future. She had let him down more than once. And Dominic Kruger was not someone known for giving second chances. The next morning, news filled the air with chaos. Brian Mendoza, who used to be the star of Silicon Valley, was on every channel. They showed his arrest and talked about serious claims of wrongdoing. Dominic sat in his office, watching the confusion unfold with a smirk. His phone rang constantly. Reporters, investors, and board members all wanted a word, a sign of reassurance from the man who seemed to rise up time and again. But Dominic's mind was already focused on his next move. He had taken care of his rivals, but there were still some matters to settle. Elena, for instance, and the child, an innocent being caught in the middle of adult decisions. He pressed the intercom. "Send her in," he said, his voice steady. Elena entered, looking small and defeated. The spark that had once drawn Dominic to her was now gone, dimmed by her own choices and his unwavering response. "Sit," he said firmly but not unkindly as Elena sank into the chair across from him. Dominic observed her for a long time. "I'm sure you've seen the news," he began. Elena nodded slowly. "Brian Mendoza is finished. Tony Harper is back where he belongs. And you?" He paused, letting the weight of her situation settle in. "You have a choice." Elena looked up, a flicker of hope in her eyes. A choice. Dominic leaned forward, his gaze steady. "Yes. I promise to care for the child. I keep my promises. But you've shown that you can't be relied upon. So here are your options. You can leave now. I'll set up a trust for the boy, ensuring he is taken care of, but you'll never see him again." Elena gasped, clutching at her chest as if overwhelmed. "Or," she whispered, fearing the answer. "Or," Dominic continued, his voice calm and clear, "you can stay. Work for me. I will oversee everything you do, and you'll be able to see the child. But remember, one mistake, one hint of betrayal, and you will lose everything for good." Tears filled Elena's eyes as she took in the full impact of Dominic's words. This was not an act of kindness. It was a tightly controlled situation. "Why?" she asked softly, her voice trembling. "Why offer me anything at all?" Dominic's expression softened for just a moment. "Because despite everything, there was a time when I cared for you. And that boy, he deserves a chance at a better life than either of us had. I might change my mind based on how you act." Elena nodded, wiping her tears. She knew she had only one choice. "I'll stay," she said softly. "Under your terms." Dominic stood up, signaling that the conversation was over. "Very well. I'll reach out to you soon." As Elena exited the office, Dominic looked out over the city. He was now clearly in control. He had completely defeated his enemies and his position was secure. Dominic Kruger adjusted his tie and got ready to meet the press. There was still more to do, an empire to manage. Dominic was a man who always looked forward, never back. The sun set in San Francisco, casting long shadows in his penthouse office. Dominic raised a glass of scotch in a silent toast, to victory, to strength, and to the success that had brought him through many challenges. He stood at the tall windows, a glass of scotch in hand, looking over the city below. The sky was filled with orange and purple as the day ended, a perfect backdrop for the conclusion of his hard work. Brian Mendoza's company, once a strong rival, was now just another piece in Dominic's growing collection, bought for a small amount after Brian's downfall. The media was buzzing with stories of corporate secrets, blackmail, and more. Brian's reputation was ruined. His future looked grim. Dominic allowed himself a slight smile. He had completely won. A soft knock at the door broke his thoughts. "Come in," he called without turning around. It was Louis Moreau, his trusted investigator. "It's done, Mr. Kruger. Tony Harper has been arrested for stealing money. The evidence we left behind was very convincing." Dominic nodded, showing his approval in the way he held himself, and asked, "How about Allison?" "She's blacklisted as you instructed. She won't find work in this city or any other," Louis replied. "Good," Dominic said, finally turning to look at Louis. "You've done well, as always. There's a bonus for you." Louis thanked him and left, knowing it was best not to stay too long in Dominic's company. Alone again, Dominic's thoughts wandered to Elena, his ex-wife, the woman who had once tried to deceive him. She was the last loose end to handle. Meanwhile, in a small, plain apartment across town, Elena Davis looked at her reflection in a dusty mirror. Gone were the fancy clothes. Instead, a woman worn down by guilt and struggle stared back at her, someone she hardly recognized. The sound of a child's laughter came from the next room, a bittersweet reminder of the one good thing to come from all the trouble. Her son, innocent and unaware of the chaos around them. Elena's phone buzzed with a message that included an address, a time, and two simple words that filled her with dread. "Be there." She recognized the sender. Dominic never signed his messages. His presence was always felt in his brief words and commands. The next day, Elena found herself at a plain office building, facing the man she had once called her husband. Dominic looked just as she remembered, perfectly dressed, with his hair neatly arranged. His eyes were as cold as ever. "Sit," he said, pointing to the chair in front of him. It wasn't a question. Elena carefully sat, her hands fidgeting in her lap. "Dominic, He raised his hand to stop her. "I don't want any apologies or explanations, Elena. What's done is done. I've found you a job. It's not fancy, but it's honest work. You'll be able to take care of yourself and the child." Elena blinked, surprised by this unexpected gesture. "Thank you," she whispered. Dominic's face showed no emotion. "Don't thank me. This isn't forgiveness. I want to make sure you and the child stay out of my life. You'll receive support for the boy's care. But remember, if you step out of line or try to contact me or anyone I know, it all goes away. Do we understand each other?" Elena nodded, a lump forming in her throat. This was it then, the final cut from her old life. As she stood to leave, Dominic spoke again, his voice softer but still firm. "I hope you find some peace, Elena, and I hope your child has a better life than the one you almost gave him." Elena rushed out of the office, tears streaming down her face. She had lost everything, her wealth, her status, her self-respect. But as she thought of her son waiting at home, she realized she still had one thing left, a chance for a better future. Dominic watched her leave, his face unreadable. He had done what needed to be done. His troubles were over, and his empire was safe. If there was a hollow feeling inside him, he told himself it was just the cost of success. 5 years passed quickly. Dominic Kruger's empire grew, reaching far beyond the tech world he once led. He had become a powerful figure in the business world, respected and feared. But tonight, as he sat in his study, none of that mattered. His eyes were on a photo he hadn't seen in years, himself as a young boy beside his father. The man's face was kind, his smile genuine. The picture was taken just weeks before everything fell apart, before his father's business partners betrayed him, leaving their family with nothing. A knock at the door brought Dominic back to reality. "Come in," he said, quickly putting away a photo in his desk drawer. His assistant walked in, looking anxious. "Mr. Kruger, there's someone here to see you. It's Elena Davis." "She says it's urgent." Dominic frowned. Elena, after so long. "Send her in," he replied, trying to keep his surprise from showing. Moments later, Elena stepped through the doorway. She looked different. Older, yes, but there was something more. She carried herself with a quiet strength that hadn't been there before. Behind her, she held the hand of a boy around 6 years old. "Dominic," Elena said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "I apologize for coming without warning. I need your help." Dominic leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. You've come a long way from where I last saw you, Elena. This better be important. She took a deep breath. I'm sick, Dominic. I have cancer. The doctors say I have 6 months, maybe less. She pointed to the boy who was exploring the room with wide eyes. This is James, my son. He's your son? Dominic asked, looking from the boy to Elena. We've talked about this, Elena. I'm not his father. That's true, she admitted. Not by blood, but you're the only one who can help him have a good life after I'm gone. Please, Dominic, I know I shouldn't ask, but— You're right, he interrupted, his tone sharp. You don't have the right to ask me. Why should I take care of the child related to the man who hurt me? Elena winced but held firm. Because you are a better person than Tony ever was. This child is innocent, and I think you need this as much as James does. Dominic raised his eyebrows at her boldness. He looked closely at the boy, who met his gaze without flinching. There was a spark in the child's eyes that reminded him of himself when he was young. After a long pause, Dominic said, I'll think about it, but I can't promise anything. You'll stay in the city where I can look after you. I'll have my doctors check on you. Relief flooded Elena's face. Thank you, Dominic. That's more than I expected. As Elena and James left the office, Dominic turned back to the window, his mind racing. What was he thinking, even considering this? Yet he picked up his phone, dialing a familiar number. Louis, I need a full background check on Elena Davis and her son James. Look into everything. After hanging up, Dominic's gaze drifted to the drawer where he had hidden the photo of his father. For the first time in years, he felt a flicker of hope. The next few months were filled with doctor visits, legal meetings, and careful observations. Elena's health declined quickly, but she faced her situation with a strength that surprised Dominic. James seemed to handle everything well. His resilience showed how well Elena had raised him. It was a chilly autumn morning when Dominic got the call. Elena had passed away in her sleep. After he hung up the phone, Dominic realized that decisions had likely been made long before this moment. He found James sitting in the hospital waiting area, looking small and confused in a place that felt too big for him. Dominic crouched down, looking into the boy's eyes. James, he said, his voice softer than it had been in a long time. I'm not your father, but I promise to do everything I can to give you the life your mother wanted for you. James nodded, his small hand reaching out to hold Dominic's. In that moment, something changed for Dominic. A little of the coldness in his heart began to melt as they left the hospital together. For the first time in years, Dominic was moving towards something rather than away from it. Over time, he and James formed a bond that surprised them both. James grew into a smart, thoughtful young man, softening Dominic's rough edges without even knowing it. Dominic's business continued to thrive, but his focus had changed. He spent more time guiding James, teaching him about more than just work, about life's values. He stressed the importance of honesty and staying strong when things got tough. One sunny afternoon in the park, while watching James play basketball with friends, Dominic was approached by someone he never expected to see, Brian Mendoza. Years had not been kind to Brian. His hair was gray and he no longer stood tall and proud. Mendoza, Dominic said coolly, you've come a long way since I last saw you. Brian winced at the reminder of his struggles. I've done a lot of thinking, Mr. Kruger, about my choices and the people I hurt, he said, taking a deep breath. I'm here to apologize for what I did to you and your company. I let ambition and personal issues take over. Dominic studied Brian, looking for any signs of insincerity, but found none. Instead, he saw a man who was truly seeking forgiveness. After a long pause, Dominic replied, Apology accepted, Brian. We all make choices we regret. It's how we deal with what follows that matters. A look of relief spread across Brian's face. Thank you. Is there any chance I could get a job? Dominic finished for him. No, but I might know someone who could use a person with your experience. Someone who believes in giving second chances to those who deserve them. As Brian walked away, he seemed lighter. Dominic turned back to James, who was now a young man. Their eyes met, and a big smile spread across James's face. Dominic smiled genuinely, a look that surprised those who knew him. Later that week, he stood in front of a crowd with James beside him, announcing the start of the Kruger Foundation. The foundation aimed to help children from troubled homes and those affected by wrongdoings in business. "In memory of my father," Dominic said, his voice strong, "and in honor of everyone who has taught me that life is about more than just winning." As the applause faded and the audience started to leave, Dominic felt a tug on his sleeve. It was his assistant, handing him an envelope. "This just arrived for you, sir. It's from the state prison." Dominic opened the letter, surprised to see it was from Tony Harper, the man who had caused him so much pain. But the letter was thoughtful. Tony shared his regrets and the lessons he learned while in prison. He admired Dominic's strength and resilience and asked for forgiveness, although he didn't expect it. Dominic folded the letter and tucked it into his pocket. He needed time to think about it and how to reply. As he and James walked back to the car, he spoke. "You know, James, forgiveness is a tricky thing. It doesn't mean forgetting the past or pretending it didn't hurt. It's about choosing to move forward and not letting old wounds shape your future." James nodded, considering this. "Is that what you're planning to do? Forgive Tony?" Dominic paused for a moment, then replied, "I think I already have. Not for him, but for myself. Holding on to anger is tiring. There are more important things to focus on now." That night, Dominic sat in his study, a blank sheet of paper in front of him. He started to write. "Tony," he wrote, "I received your letter. While I can't change the past, I choose to move ahead. Use your time wisely to reflect and grow. When you get out, there may be a place for you at the foundation. Not for who you were, but for who you can become." As he signed his name, Dominic felt a wave of calm wash over him. He looked at a photo of his father, now proudly on his desk. "I did it, Dad," he whispered. "I built something lasting and good." For the first time in years, Dominic Kruger looked to the future, not with worry or calculation, but with hope. He felt ready to face whatever came next, armed with the wisdom to handle future challenges and the understanding of what truly mattered. Victory, he realized, wasn't just about defeating others or gaining wealth. It was about creating something special and making the world a better place. As he switched off the lights and walked out of his study, Dominic felt a sense of freedom. Tomorrow was a new day full of chances, and he was eager to meet it with honesty, kindness, and the lessons he had learned from his experiences.
What's up, story lovers? This is the Story Guy, and if you're hungry for crazy tales and mind-blowing narratives, you've come to the right place. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button so you don't miss out on our weekly dose of crazy cheating stories, fun fiction, and gut-ripping comedy from around the world. But that's not all. We also create our own original stories, and trust me, you won't find these anywhere else. Want even more spine-tingling reads? Head down to the description and grab our exclusive story collections. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.